Hello, and welcome to my very first installment of Teacher Talks. My name is Camille Caspi, a social studies teacher at SciTech Charter High School in Long Beach, California, and an Azusa Pacific University grad student earning my Master's of Arts in Education, Learning and Technology, as well as my Mild Moderate Disabilities Education Specialist credential. In today's podcast, I will talk about why I chose, or rather, I was called upon to become a teacher, my beliefs and experiences that influenced me along this journey, and how it has been a part of creating who I am today. In order to talk about my path towards teaching, we need to take it all the way back to my elementary school days. This is where my passion for service started. At a young age, I knew that I had a responsibility to give back and help others. I think a huge factor that contributed to this belief was my upbringing. In the house I grew up in, there were 3 generations living under one roof, with cousins, aunts, and uncles coming in and out for both temporary and long-term stays. I think even at one point, there must have been 11 people living at our house at the same time. And I say that to say this: having all that family around all the time showed me the importance of helping others and what supporting each other in times of need looks like. Another factor that drove my passion for service were my parents. They met in college in the Philippines and were both in a service fraternity where they helped raise money and clean up the local socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. Their passion for service was instilled in me growing up because they always said that there are other people out there not as fortunate. So giving back is something that those with the means should do, no questions about it. And it might seem a bit far-fetched, but I knew in elementary school that a career where I could serve others was something I was going to do. When I got to middle school, my career goal was the same, to serve others. However, here's where I realized that I specifically wanted to become a teacher. My middle school teachers were the greatest. The best ones were the most genuine, made authentic connections with their students, created engaging lesson plans, and truly had our best interests at heart. They always came to school so excited, and it was infectious. That excitement made me more excited about learning, and the thought of doing what they do and get paid for doing it began brewing in my head. In high school, I connected most with the history and social studies curriculum. Learning about the past and how it has shaped our present has always been fascinating, even if it was just a bunch of old dead white guys in history. Side note, content, or looking back at the past to inform the future, is my top strength from the Clifton StrengthsFinder survey. Very accurate. I also became involved in Interact, a service club. One of the many projects that stuck in my mind was our trips to orphanages in Tijuana. We'd make blankets and collect donations every year in order to drive it down there for the kids to have. This experience gave me a first-hand account of the conditions school-aged children in impoverished areas were living in, and a complete wake-up call to not take everything I have for granted. I also realized that kids should not be living like this, and I wanted to do something about it. During my undergraduate years at the University of California, San Diego, is when I found my social justice voice. It wasn't from any of the classes I was taking per se, but from joining Kaibigang Pilipino, a Filipino cultural group, is where I realized that there were so many inequalities in our educational upbringings. Not everyone who made it to UCSD had to work as hard as I did, or actually had to work twice as hard in order to secure their spot there. It was here where I learned that affirmative action is necessary in order for our colleges and universities to see more diversity and people of color in attendance. It was here where I learned about the system of meritocracy and how it is great in theory. However, not everyone has the same vantage point as others, and there should be other factors to be considered than just what it says on paper. It was also here where the Compton Cookout, an ill-advised frat party mocking black people, occurred. I had never realized what the extent of racism and its effects on minority groups on college campuses could be until that winter quarter in February 2010. A party that was supposed to be in honor of Black History Month instead devastated the 1.3% black student population who had already felt alone and isolated on campus. However, the Black Student Union and their allies did not wallow in sadness. They took this as a teaching opportunity for the entire campus. They led sit-ins, walkouts, marches, all throughout campus that week until their voices were heard, demands were met, and campus changes were being made. To think that all of this could have been avoided if students had cultural sensitivity and opportunities to share their culture often in schools were being done. I learned then that when I become a teacher, I was going to expose students to a variety of history and culture, not just the dominant one, so when they leave for the real world, they have an appreciation for others' differences rather than hatred. After a year of getting prerequisite classes in order, I attended San Diego State University in order to obtain my single subject teaching credential in the social sciences. The cohort consisted of people who were predominantly identified as white, and there was not much diversity. As being one of the very few women of color, a lot of my viewpoints and beliefs were drastically different from my white male counterparts. It was here when I knew what kind of population I wanted to serve. I wanted to work with minority students, students who were socioeconomically disadvantaged, and those who cannot advocate for themselves. I wanted to work with these marginalized groups in order to empower them so they can go back to their communities and uplift them as well. I also believe a child's education is more impactful when the teachers can reflect the demographics of the students they are serving. When I finished my single subject social science credential program, I immediately started applying to jobs. After about 100 applications and maybe just a handful of interviews later, I landed my first official teaching job at SciTech Charter High School, where I still currently work. SciTech is a credit retrieval program that focuses on utilizing a variety of technology to further students' education. Students come from a variety of places, but more importantly, they are just a demographic that I've been wanting to support. One of the many joys that I get in teaching my students is introducing them to new technologies that they might not have been able to experience if they were attending a different school. To see their faces lighting up and knowing that they have potential to do more than just stopping to get the high school diploma is what keeps me motivated to continue to help these students achieve success. This leads me to today. Although teaching social science is essentially my dream job, I decided to come back to school. One factor for the comeback is because at my site, we don't have a full-time education specialist. The one we do have comes every other month and usually is just there to update students' IEPs. The rest of the time, the students are fully included in the general education classrooms, which can sometimes be difficult for the general education teachers in figuring out the best ways to accommodate the student. Students with special needs in my classroom tend to take a longer time in completing the program because they are not getting that one-on-one support that an education specialist can provide. This also goes back to family. A good amount of the younger kids in my family have learning disabilities. Because they know I'm a teacher, my family always comes to me for advice. However, I didn't think I was qualified to give it because I didn't have experience in special education. So I'm also here doing this for them. I was meant to experience all these things on my educational journey because it has called me to teaching. Like everyone on this earth, I was placed here for a reason. To serve the greater good, utilizing my talents and experiences as a teacher. Through teaching, I am building a network in order to connect people with each other. Side note 2, connectedness, also a strength from the Clifton Strengths Finder survey. I'm giving back to the community that has already given so much to me, and it is a dominant part of my life that without it would be hard to find a different purpose. This concludes my first installment of Teacher Talks. Again, this is Camille Caspi. Hope you come back to catch the next segment. Thanks for listening.